Welcome to Divorce and Relationships Decoded, the show that takes the guesswork out of love, loss, and everything in between. Hosted by me, Jennifer Perri, a CDC Certified Divorce and Empowerment Coach, and Dr. Deborah Wilder, a divorce and relationship expert. This is the place where real conversations meet expert advice. So get ready to decode divorce and relationships like never before. Divorce and Relationships Decoded starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Divorce and Relationships Decoded. I am one of your hosts, Jennifer Perri. I'm a certified divorce coach, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Dr. Deborah Wilder, who is a divorce and relationship specialist. Hello, my friend. Good to see you again.
Morning. Good to see you too.
So today we are back for part 2 of discussing boundaries. And I am going to start with this question. How do we not lose ourselves in a relationship with someone?
I'm thinking of 3 words right now: independence, codependence, and interdependence. And interdependence is really the healthiest sort of way of being in a relationship. There's sometimes the fear of losing oneself in a relationship, which can keep someone in a very independent state while in a relationship. And then you've got the other end, which is codependence, which you're all mushed in and it's hard to separate yourself and your needs and things like that. We talked about boundaries. What boundaries do, they don't necessarily keep people out. They're not barriers, but they establish ourselves and our expectations to be a part of a relationship so that we can have that interdependence. It's interesting. I'm working with a couple now where the husband actually, they're married. The husband actually still has questions of, what does it mean to be married? How do you join someone in marriage without losing yourself? And so we're working on that because that's a real fear that he has. And when he asks the question, what does it mean? What are the expectations of being married? What does that look like? And I think we all come into marriage with expectations, or any relationship with expectations, but it's just interesting when we were talking about boundaries and losing oneself and that sort of thing. Ideally, being interdependent in a relationship, let's say a romantic partnership, is a healthier thing than being completely independent or codependent. It's a nice mix of both.
We had talked about it, I think, in one of our first segments about that, because I felt like I was totally codependent on my husband. And I was for a period of time. When I was in a wheelchair, I couldn't do anything. He was my legs, he was my hands.
That was dependent. That wasn't codependent.
Dependent. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. But I feel after that conversation that we had, being interdependent on one another is exactly where we are.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel really good, because sometimes I think you can carry the entire relationship and the other person just interjects in and out. And it's more out of what they want, or if there's something they want, then of course it's almost like they'll pay attention to that period of time to get what they want from it. It's good to be independent to a certain level, like understanding. I talk about that with my financial clients and making sure we understand what's going on individually in finance and stuff, because women statistically are going to outlive men, and we're going to be completely responsible for ourselves at some point. So being independent to a certain point. Marriage is about compromise. It is about boundaries. It is a partnership.
You bring something up to it's important to maintain your own sense of self in a relationship. That doesn't mean you lose who you are, but you can join with someone else and build a life together. You can still have your friends, your job, or your hobbies, or things that are important to you, and maintain your interests in if that's important to you, but not lose yourself in a relationship. But you can belong together in a relationship. Versus, again, the other part where you really are dependent on that other person for your mood, for what kind of a day you're going to have. Is it okay to do something or not? That sort of thing. Now, you were in a physical need. It was a physical need. And so, yes, you were dependent on a caretaker. And your husband, of course, who's an incredible person who adores you beyond anything, took care of you, and you would do the same for him. You had needs you had to be taken care of. That's different than being codependent. That's a whole different thing. But we can be in a relationship without losing ourselves. And that's important because we can each bring something special to the relationship. But if we don't focus on building the relationship and building a life together versus I work with couples too. And I'm sure you've seen this in your work in finance. Some people will have, let's say, completely separate finances and completely separate bank accounts or completely separate things. And I'll pay the grocery bill and you pay the utilities, or I'll pay. And that's a discussion that a lot of young couples will have, is what's appropriate, what makes sense. Do we pool most of our resources and we each have an account on the side for us? How do we do this? How do we manage finances? Again, I don't want to lose myself. I don't want to lose my independence or things like that. And this kind of actually, to take it beyond, and I don't know if we were planning on talking about this today, but let's say when kids come along, it's typically, if someone needs to, or the couple decides to have a parent stay home and with the kids, it's typically the mom. And so what happens there with her sense of independence or her sense of financial well-being or things like that, it's a very important area. It's a very important topic to talk about. But when you feel, and you've mentioned this too, it's a partnership. If there is truly a partnership, then someone should not feel less than, greater than, but really equal and equitable in that relationship. And we talked about boundaries and all of that. So all these things are mixed in. So in a healthy relationship, there's a sense of interdependence while still maintaining your own identity.
You bring up kids too, and let me ask you this question. So I work with primarily women that are coming out of divorce, and time again, women who have been married for 25 years or more have said, after the kids were out of the house, we didn't know each other. We didn't have anything. We had nothing, no common interest. That was it. Like the kids were the glue. In that type of situation, is it where people have just lost themselves so much because they've been so focused on being a mom, being a dad, trying to make everything stay together, that they've lost themselves in the identity of parenting?
I think a lot of times it's a relationship breakdown with a spouse. The kids need care. We have to be there for the kids. We typically want to be there for our children. But sometimes the relationship gets pushed back. So by that time, if the relationship has not been nurtured and taken care of and prioritized as well, then by the time the kids are older and they're interested in their own stuff, then what are we left with? As you said, sometimes we're two people who could be roommates. We could just coexist under one roof. You live your life, I live mine. And so the relationship really does need to be nurtured, that all throughout the marriage, and to make sure that each of you feels like a priority. Each of you feels that you're important and that you're special. Once you realize or start feeling like you're not so special in a relationship, it's painful. It hurts. And so again, that garden analogy that we've used before, you could plant a beautiful garden, but if you don't maintain it, it's not going to look like you envisioned. So that maintaining of the relationship is very important. So that by the time the kids get older and let's say they move out or whatever, you still have that solid relationship, that friendship, that even romantic relationship still, because you've nurtured it and you've prioritized it. So that makes all the difference. If the relationship is forgotten, then that's not so good.
I want to make a little bit of a shift to boundaries also extend outside of intimate relationships. So I wanted to get your thoughts on establishing boundaries, maybe with your kids or with some friends, because it seems like, even in my own experience, that when you're setting boundaries, you don't realize that you have to set them in all other areas too. You would think that your friends or your children would know what they're supposed to do or how they're supposed to respect you. In a lot of cases, they don't. And I shared in the first part of the boundaries, I've lost friendships, or I've let go, not lost. I have willingly let go of friendships who disrespected my boundaries, even though they were established multiple times in love. I still had to let go of those. And some of those have been very hard to let go of, but I did. What is the best way to establish boundaries with your children?
Letting them know what those boundaries are, letting them know, even at a young age, what are the expectations? And if you need to make a little behavior chart or expectations chart or chore chart or whatever, you teach your children what your expectations are. But if you're not consistent in enforcing that, then that's on you. So my kids were young when I got divorced, and I was much more of a permissive parent. I was very fortunate. We didn't have any really difficult problems Yet I was a permissive parent. I learned about myself as a parent. I was not a great enforcer. With that, that's not necessarily a big part of my personality. I'm not a great enforcer until I am. Until, again, that you reach that line, that, let's say, non-negotiable. But with kids, I think it's important to be flexible. It's important to be gentle and firm. And when you can let them know what the expectations are, that's great. But if you don't reinforce it, if you are not consistent, then how are they going to learn? If the fifth time, as you said, they ask you for something, or the fifth time, then maybe then what they learn is, I have 5 tries here.
I have 5 tries.
I have 5 tries. And then I know I have to, when she says for the 5th time, go to bed, I have to go to bed. But really, it's about consistency and enforcing that and having consequences if they don't, whoever they are. If an expectation or boundary is crossed or the expectation isn't met, then if there's no consequence, how is someone going to learn? So with kids or with other family members, letting them know what those boundaries are and then reinforcing them appropriately, I'll say. What do you think?
My sons were 8 and 4 when my first husband and I divorced. And it was a very bad situation. So it was really hard for me to do anything other than keep them safe. Trying to have some type of normalcy. I was not a big enforcer at that time. But the day that I had it, like the day I can remember vividly still, we were driving down the road and they had been arguing about a handheld. I think it was Nintendo or something. And I had told them, and I think the second time I told them, they did it again. I grabbed it. I reached behind and I grabbed it and I threw it out the window on the highway.
Oh,
and
wow.
They couldn't believe it. Like they were watching, oh my, this woman's going crazy. And then it was giving them the opportunity to go outside and pick up their stuff in the yard. And then they didn't do it and they didn't do it and they didn't do it. And then I ran over it with a lawnmower. If you are somebody who's listening to this and you really realize that you're not a very good enforcer of your boundaries, or you haven't established boundaries or set a no manifesto for yourself, you may want to involve the people around you to say, hey, listen, I just am really trying to take more ownership in my life and our home. And here's some changes, whether it's a rule chart or, like you were saying, like a behavior chart or a chore chart, of course, depending upon the ages of your children, but making sure that you establish those. Because my husband and I recently watched a show. It's almost like they're glorifying children being extremely defiant. And they're glorifying that. And then they're showing the backstory of the parent who is just suffering and struggling the whole time. Why aren't we talking more about families that have structure? Why aren't we seeing it in the media, talking more things like that? I just think it's flip-flopped. I understand and we live in a world now where everybody is speaking their power and they're standing for what they believe in. I totally understand that. But I feel that we, even as a nation, are struggling with boundaries. And I'm not going to get political at all. But I just think the glorification of it or the attention to that is they're just not paying attention to it in the family. So I think establishing boundaries with your children, age appropriate, what they're seeing, what they're doing, how they're doing it, how they're responding to you is important.
I agree with you. I think it's very important. And one thing I was just going to say is that's kind of drama, and drama sells. So if that's the sort of what you're talking about, that show, that kind of show might get more viewers than a show about a parent trying to establish a healthier relationship with a child or healthier boundaries. But yeah, I hate to say it, it's entertainment.
And it is entertainment. But I think what a lot of people forget is that their children are watching that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at it like, this one in this show, look at her. She's sneaking out in the middle of the night, or they're doing drugs. I think you reel it back into setting boundaries includes, to a certain level, their visibility and exposure to what may be in or trending is important to monitor as well. It's telling you how to raise their children. But I look at it like, if I had to raise my boys all over again today with social media the way that it is, it would be a struggle. I would have so much more boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. But it takes a village too, I think, to have people. So that's what I was thinking as well. We can have boundaries and it still may be a challenge for us to get help, even from extended family members. I had a lot of support when my kids were young, still do now. It does take a village. And when you have people to help with little kids. It makes all the difference in the world. You've had to pave your own way in so many ways. But your story about the Nintendo thing or whatever you threw out the window, I'm sure they would remember that.
As far as establishing boundaries with friends, what are your thoughts on that?
That's important too, I think. I was just trying to think, there may be that friend who's always late, or there may be that friend who calls at the last minute or cancels at the last minute, or who might drink too much, let's say, or people who, again, just don't necessarily respect your own space or your time or things like that. And there may be people who might never reach out, but they expect that we reach out to them. Or there might be that friend who is just talks about herself or himself and doesn't ask about you. So I think there are a number of situations that can make us question, what kind of friendship is this? Or what do we do about this if we want that person in our lives? Or if we realize maybe that's not such a great thing. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. The friends that I have now, it's quality friendships over quantity of friendships. I have hundreds of acquaintances. That's great. They're not in my little world, right? They're not in the inner circle. And I think everybody who is in the inner circle that I have in my life, there's such mutual respect and adoration and love for one another that I know if there was something, even in our friendship, that there was something felt off, we would have a conversation about it. And I think that's so important because you value that relationship, and having that relationship and having that respect, that mutual respect and adoration for each other, and open communication is very important. And that's why I'm very happy that I have just a little circle of friends that are my ride or dies. When I was in the hospital, I learned a lot about that time, not only about myself and my strength and my relationship with my husband, but also my friendships. You have people who are with you all the time when things are great, life is wonderful, everything is up and they're all there. But when what hits the fan, it's your real friends who rise to the occasion. I think it's understanding too that the relationships you have and the boundaries that you set and the communication that you have with people are going to be your determining factors. If they not abide by them, but if they respect you, that those are the ones that are there. Those are the ones who will be there. And those are the relationships that I pour myself into and I nurture and I'm there for and I show up for because they're valuable to me. So friendships can be very, very interesting. And I think I'm most impressed by the friendships that have been since people were in like elementary school. And I don't have any friendships like that. I don't. Like when I was done school, it just everybody went their own separate way. But my husband has friends like that. And I think it's amazing. I think that's just wonderful.
They are. I have one. We've known each other for about 55 years. And,
oh my goodness.
We met when we were little. And so we still are friends to this day, which is so nice. But that it's few and far between. And there's also friends who you might not talk to for months and months at a time, or even years at a time. But then the moment you're on the phone with them, or
right back up again.
Yes. So friends don't have to be there all the time. There's just a whole, again, spectrum. I'm a big kind of spectrum person of friendships. But you're right. It's when things get tough, who shows up for you? Yeah, who shows up for you? And I've discovered in my life, there are some friends who really, we had grown apart, but in times of trouble, they've shown up for me and they just reminded me who they are in my life. Very special people in my life. So we're fortunate to have those of us who have friends. It's a very fortunate thing because not everybody does have that kind of support.
They don't. And I want to wrap up today just talking just a little bit about a no manifesto and what it means, because it's something that I was introduced to not terribly long ago, a couple of years ago. And I just thought it was a very powerful tool, especially for somebody who is maybe coming out of a relationship or coming out of a job, or something has happened in their life and they haven't been a real good boundary setter and they haven't been really prioritizing themselves. And really what it is, just making a promise to yourself, and it's setting in stone what you're no longer available for. And a lot of times I use it with clients to establish it in their work and also their personal life and in relationships. It's literally sitting down and making a promise to yourself. What does it mean I'm no longer available for? I'm no longer available for things that don't serve me anymore. So if you are the parent, and I did this with one of my clients, and she was talking about a little bit of a pushback that she got because she was a teen mom and was responsible for a lot of things. And when she started delegating to other people, she had a pushback from it because she was the one that was always not only taking care of her home and working, but now she was the one that was taking care of everything and everyone, having all the stuff at the games, having all the things in place. And she just put it out there and said, who wants to sign up for this? And who wants to sign up for that? Because it was supposed to be a team effort. And she said, I had a little bit of a pushback and I almost wanted to cave and say, don't worry about it, I'll do it. But she said, after the first person signed up, then the next person signed up and the next person signed up. I think it's a good way to reclaim your voice and set it in place for your own personal life, in your relationships, and even in business. I have a very strict no manifesto in my business about the type of clients that I will work with, what my expectations are, what I know I will bring for my client, but what my expectations are of my clients. So it's important. And if you're not sure how to establish that, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to send you the framework for it. But it's just really about a promise that you make to yourself. And it's not just one you put up here. It's one you literally write out. You have it visible wherever you can. Some of my clients throw it on their vision board. I have my no manifesto on my computer just to remind myself every once in a while. And there are things that you run up into the first time and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I had a stance on that.
Yeah.
And you add it into your no manifesto. It's just a great tool and it's a great framework to start pulling stuff in. And especially as I've gotten older and my business has grown, you have to revisit your no manifesto and make sure that you're adding in things that really apply to your personal life and your business. So that's something that I use. Have you ever established something like that in your life using it?
No, and I'm really interested in it. So I'm going to take a look at that. I think that's awesome. I think it's fantastic.
It's just a nice framework to start taking back some control. And I also love James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, talks about stackable habits. And sometimes that's great for understanding, okay, I'm going to set this boundary, or I'm going to put this on my no manifesto and I'm going to see how this works and see how I do. And then you start gaining confidence. Like with one of my clients is so funny. And she was very timid when we first met. She was married to a narcissist, went through a really hellacious divorce. And now I say no everywhere. And I'm like, we can get a little too good at saying no. So she was like, no, but seriously, like I didn't realize, Jennifer, how many people were taking advantage of me in my life. And I was letting it. So it's understanding that, hey, you have a voice, what you want matters, and making sure that other people understand that as well is so important. But before we get ready to wrap up, is there anything that you would like to add as we finalize our 2-part series on boundaries?
No, I'm definitely interested in your no manifesto. I love that. I definitely want to check that out and read more about that. I think that's fantastic. Just remember, boundaries aren't barriers necessarily, but if you don't reinforce them and you're not consistent, they're not going to work. But it's also a challenge. So that's one thing too. It's hard often to establish a boundary and just be kind to yourself as you're working through it. It's hard enough to do that. Just be kind to yourself. That can make a difference.
I couldn't end any better way than that. So thank you all for joining us for the 2-part series on boundaries. And please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share these with people that you think just need to have this information in our life. Introduce them to us. Let them know that we're here for them and we're here for you as always. Dr. Wilder, thank you, my dear friend, for being here and providing such valuable insight and information. And we will be back again next week with another topic and a question of the week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of Divorce and Relationships Decoded. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and empowering. If this conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Remember, healing, growth, and transformation happens one conversation at a time. If you have a question, a story, or a topic you'd love for us to explore, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at questions@drdecoded.com. Your thoughts and experiences are always welcome here. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week for another insightful episode of Divorce and Relationships Decoded. Until then, take care and keep moving forward.